Amazing. I'm here today with Reuben Langdon. Reuben, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're literally, I was just saying to you, you have a series on Gaia, which I found in June, and it's literally, because I don't watch a lot of stuff, but whenever I want to watch something, that's what I put on. And so they're the only thing I've watched in the last 6 months, and now I'm here talking
All
to
right.
this. So I have to start by saying, I think you're an amazing interviewer, really, really great interviewer. It's not an easy skill. I think it's a very underrated skill, but you really are a brilliant interviewer. So thank you for,
Oh, thank you. I'm just going with the flow here. I'm just a curious guy and I've got a lot of questions. So, and I happen to have some film and editing background with my work in the past in Hollywood. So I'm just like, yeah, let's do this. Let's see how this goes. I'm sure it's evolved over the years and over the episodes. Hopefully it's gotten better because, the more you do it and you kind of get used to things. So I look back at my first episodes and I'm like, man, that was pretty clunky, but it's just my fun, my passion. So
yeah, that's something I wanted to ask you about as well as the journey of it. But should we just start with like what inspired you to make the show in the first place? And do you want to tell people about the show? Because probably a lot of people don't know about it, but it's quite a unique subject matter, but something that resonates very, very deeply with me. So tell us what motivated you to start on that journey.
Sure. Yeah, I had been, so back in 2007, I had my own UFO sighting, and that weaponized my curiosity, as my good friend Jeremy Corbell says. And I started going down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out what I saw. And the more I dug deeper into that world of ufology and the ET and the military cover up and Roswell and just all the different cases out there, I started to get even more curious, like what's going on? Why is there a cover up? If there are ETs here, what's the deal? If there's recovered vehicles and technologies, why isn't that allowed to be in the public? And that really brought me into going deep. I feel like that's like the gateway drug into a whole gamut of subjects. Understanding how our financial system works, the military, the cover-ups, the different groups, it's the standard conspiracy stuff. And I went really deep, and I started actually, because of my status in Hollywood, having worked on big projects like Avatar, and at the time I had my own visual effects production company producing AAA games and video games and working on big movie projects. I kind of used that status or clout to get my foot in the door and meet with some high-end people in the UFO community. People like Dr. Stephen Greer and Linda Bolton Howe, Richard Dolan, quickly became friends with these people and started trying to find out more and talking with them, discussing with them. And then I even produced an event called the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure in 2013, which was a 5-day mock trial congressional hearing with 6 former members of Congress, and brought together over 40 witnesses, mostly ex-government military people. And that can be found on YouTube now, all 40 episodes, which is over 32 hours of content. Yeah. Maybe I'll give you a link to check that out. It's kind of boring for me because it's just old information, but for people who might be new to the UFO topic, it's really legitimizes the subject in sort of your newbie. So if I always I call it the ABCs of ufology. If somebody's new to the UFO subject and wants to know, the mechanics of the cover up and our media censorship and these kinds of things, it's really a good thing it's easy to digest for people who might be the hardcore skeptics. And during all that time, I was exploring and going deeper and meeting with contactees and abductees. and getting testimony. And then I was holding meetings at my studio in the Marina Del Rey in LA, in the sort of the heart of the Hollywood community. And I invited people from the Hollywood community to come and hang out at these meetings, people who were interested in, every month we'd have a special guest like Richard Dolan, or even former Senator, or the late Senator Mike Gravel, all kinds of different people from the UFO community would come and speak at these meetings, and they would get up into, a couple hundred people, or hundreds of people. We started with like 5 people, and then it got up to over 100 people. And in those meetings, Wendy Kennedy and Nora Harold and Daryl Anka all showed up at these meetings, and they were all channelers. And I didn't know they were channelers. I wasn't into the channeling phenomenon at that time. And having talked with Wendy about her contact experiences, she was one day explaining that she channels these beings from the Pleiades. And I was like, yeah, yeah, okay. That's kind of strange, but whatever. Maybe there's some truth to that. And then she said, we were just talking about, she didn't go into too much detail about that at the time, but I was talking about her abduction experiences, and she said it was a soul contract. And right away, a light went off in my head. That was like, that's it. That made more sense, because I had talked to hundreds of abductees and contactees, and many who were in fear, and then many who had miraculous healings, who had shared the information about the hybrid children and whatnot. And when, for whatever reason, soul contract like really resonated, and I was like, that's it. That's the missing key to all of this. When you're in the ufology world, it didn't, like, a lot of, when you look at just the science and the data, it didn't add up. There was some people were saying maybe it's nefarious, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. The nefarious agenda idea doesn't make sense because of all the data that we have. Logically, if they were nefarious, they would have already attacked us. They would have already turned us all into slaves and made us into whatever. Why are they waiting for us to gain in our technological advancements and in our spiritual awareness and our understanding of this phenomenon? Why would they wait if they were nefarious? So then I continued the dialogue with Wendy, started talking with Nora, and they explained that they channel these beings. And then I started listening to some of that material, and I was like, oh my God, what they're saying is the missing pieces to all this data that I had. And it fit like a perfect puzzle. All this data that I had collected on the phenomenon and everything that they said just fit. And I was like, that's it. That makes sense. I need to find out more about this. And I was sort of sick and tired at that time of all the negativity around the phenomenon. People were just, every TV show, everything that was discussed in the open, in the media and in the open sectors seemed to be negative. And that just didn't make sense based on the data. So I was like, you know what, I want to tell a different story. I want to tell a story of interaction with these beings, of being a positive one, because that's my data sets were showing that. And the channeling and the messages coming from the channelers and the beings that would come in and how they explained it and described things really resonate with me. And I said, nobody's telling the story. I need to tell this story. So that was the inspiration. That's how it sort of started.
And interestingly, you came at it from that side, because that's from outside looking in. And now, I don't know when you started doing the interviews, but that's what I want to talk to you about next. But that's been such a
2013.
journey. That right. So that's what, 8 years you've like come.
2014, I should say. Sorry.
7 years, you're really like in it now, right? You're seeing it from a different perspective. Can you just, before we get into that, can you tell us first what happened in 2007? What your experience was?
It was really just a bunch of little specks in the sky. pretty, I mean, since then I've had way more engaging, crazy experiences. But it was enough to get me going to, for 30 minutes or 40 minutes or so, I just saw these little specks show up in the sky, little white dots. They looked circular, but they were really far out. But I saw, perhaps 20 to 30 of these things. And I couldn't explain it. And they were obviously not planes. They weren't balloons. They were unidentified flying objects. They were UFOs in the middle of the day when I was still in Burbank, California, in 2007. So the next day I thought it was going to be all over the news, and like, this was the game changer. The world is now, we have this UFO thing. This UFO phenomenon is going to be, that opened up to the world. And then when it wasn't, and there was no discussion about it, and there was no other reporting about it, that's what actually got me even more curious. I'm like, okay, I clearly saw something that probably many people saw, and yet there's no talk about it. This is nuts. And then I started researching. That's when I started researching and realizing that, oh, this stuff happens all the time, but it's underreported. You're put immediately into the cuckoo camp, and the truth embargo, so to say. That's the coined phrase around, we use in the citizen hearing. The truth embargo was legitimate, and then so that just started on me on the rabbit hole. So it wasn't that significant as sightings go in general, but for me personally, it was very significant because it got me started on this path.
I've got a question kind of formulating, and it's kind of hard to put into words, but I know you're gonna know what I mean, because this is the stuff we talk about all the time. Because you have to get interdimensional straight away. You can't talk about this stuff without being interdimensional, right? So for me, the experience has always been very internal, and I realize now at this point that I've always had a relationship with these interdimensional, extra-dimensional beings, and to me that's very real because they've been with me my whole life, and I'm only at this point realizing that that's not a commonplace thing, and actually getting to know these beings a bit better and who they are. So for me to come in from an internal way, it's completely makes all the sense. And then you're coming at from the external way and coming it into it, but it's the same thing, right? Because we're talking about a different dimension.
Yeah. I mean, so for me, I agree. There's the ultimately through my research, and obviously, hopefully through the messages that are coming through my interviews, ultimately the best gateway into, or the only real gateway into this phenomenon, is an internal one. We have the external phenomenon to shake people up and jolt people like myself. That's very, left brain, analytical, logic. That the people like myself need that physical slap in the face to question our reality. So then we can start to go in and do the internal work. And that's what I feel I've been since that experience. I really have been on this internal journey, and it probably shows in my show that through meditation, breath work, plant medicine work, and this internal journey has been a big part of my evolution, that has been allowing me to, and the show itself, the show and the questions and the answers that I get back are helping me on this internal journey to ask and go deeper. Ultimately, we cannot go deeper into the phenomenon unless we go inside.
I don't know if this is too much of a question, but like, as soon as I started watching you, I could see that you're like a galactic ambassador, but it seems at the beginning that you don't know that.
Right. Yes, I don't. I'm just a curious dude, and then I realize, oh, maybe I'm a galactic ambassador now.
You have all the knowledge. Like, this is what I want to get into, because this is why I've got so many questions for you, because you've spoken to all these people. You have probably better knowledge than maybe any, more than 0.1% of people on the planet right now, right?
I don't realize how much knowledge and data I have until I start having conversations like this. Um, and of recent, I've sort of realized I do have a lot of data, data sets and experience, personal experience in the woo, in this crazy world of UFOs and paranormal other dimensions. So, um, uh, and it's all interconnected, you know, to what's happening on the planet right now. You know, obviously, especially what you guys are dealing with in Australia.
I'm in London. I'm in London.
Oh, in London. I'm sorry. I thought you were in London. Still, you guys are dealing with it in a much a much more visceral way than we are in the States. We get a little bit of that in Los Angeles and New York, but you know, and what's to come is obviously, you know, when you're paying attention to all this, you know what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, and like you say, it's all interconnected. Okay,
Interconnected, yeah.
all these questions are so big, and this is like an impossible question to answer. But can you can you explain galactic history to us? I know you can't, but the thing is, it's like when you're interviewing people, they all give you little bits of information, and some of it's like, oh yeah, that really makes sense. And then someone else will say the thing, and it's like the same but a bit different, and you're like, oh yeah, but that really makes sense as well. Like I know it's an impossible question to ask, but from your perspective, can you fill us in a bit on galactic history and what you've pieced together?
Sure. I think it's a big one. So far, the what I've been able to, just a quick sort of to point people in the right direction. If they want to know more about galactic history, from all my research, Lisa Royale in her book, The Prism of Lyra, has probably the best sort of breakdown of galactic history that I've seen thus far. And all the other channelers that bring different entities in support that story to a certain extent. You know, depending on the channel and depending on the filter and different things, things shift. It's not all exact. So I think a lot of people get caught up on the details, and when they say, oh, one channeler says this, another channeler says this, and it doesn't exactly match up, and I feel you're sort of shooting yourself in the foot when you try to make those comparisons. I think because the phenomenon is not clear, because we're dealing with different ego filters of channelers bringing through information. So there is no gospel truth that, you know, one channeler has all the answers. And that's why I like to do this buffet of exploring all these different channelers and entities and consciousnesses, and then let the audience decide, you know, what resonates with them to find the what works. So my interpretation of what our galactic history is might be different than somebody who's doing similar research and things like that. So little disclaimer of our galactic history, I think it's fluid. It depends on the person and their on their journey. But in a general sense, as general as I can make it without getting into too much specifics, I believe humans are a mixed bag of different DNA structures, or archetypes is probably a better word to use, from different galactic civilizations. It seems to be the furthest we go back is Lyra and Vega. These two systems, solar systems, have created sort of the humanoid archetype of the basic human structure. And as far as we can go back with these channelings and the Akashic records, it seems like that's where this form of humanity started. And from there, they branched into different parts of the galaxy: the Zetas, the Pleiades, the Sirians, the Orions. We have, all these different galactic consciousnesses that have funneled down into creating the Earth experience, fractalized versions of the same thing. And when you fractal something, are you familiar with the term fractals and how that works? So it's a reflection of it contains all the information of the original, right? So like a hologram, one piece of the hologram holds all the information of the whole structure. So we are fractalized versions of these different solar systems, with our DNA being holographic in nature. And in those structures, all that is stories, different stories, archetypal stories. And we can see this with work with the tarot and other other modalities, runes. There's many ancient modalities, the I Ching, throughout our history here on Earth, that tap into these archetypes. And we can read the stories, the archetypal structures and the stories through these modalities to better understand who we are. Astrology is great, and then in the Mayan astrology, Mayan calendars, we have all these different systems that we can use to reflect on and look into who we are. And I think they all have their place. I don't think one, it depends on the reader who's interpreting and who can connect in, and they may resonate with one modality more than the other. But essentially, we're playing out a lot of the same stories from these different civilizations in this human form in various aspects. And by doing so, what is the purpose of all this, is a lot of people ask. And I think it's we're just expressing source in these different ways, like making a soup and adding all the different ingredients and letting it simmer and cook and mix and match. And then you get a different flavor. And in every iteration of that soup, you're going to add more ingredients and do different things, and it's going to have a different flavor and a different taste. And I think that's all we're doing here, is we're creating different soups for a source to express itself and play and have fun and come out with stronger, better ways to express themselves. So then we can then go and aid and assist other civilizations who are making their own version of soup. I know that was a lot of different ways and tangents there. I don't know if that even got close to answering your question, but
this is the thing, is because we're talking about interdimensional stuff, you can't answer it in a 3D way, really.
Exactly. Yeah.
And our logical brains are like, give me a logical answer, but you can't answer these things in logical ways because it's beyond logical, right? But let's try again. So what's happened on Earth? Like, give us what happened 2,000 years ago, or however long you think it is, and who's the anarchy or the Zeta Story, the reptilians? Like, let's bring all that piece in. Like,
so I would go with the 26,000 year cycle. That seems to be 26,013. So the precession of the equinox is, we have physical evidence that our scientists agree that happens. And when you look at the precession of the equinox, we have a 26,000-year-old cycle that we go through the 12 signs of the zodiac. And we're moving now, everybody says we're moving away from Pisces and we're moving into the age of the Aquarius, which 13,000 years ago, so half a cycle ago, I think a full cycle it's an expression of like day and night. So we have polarity because of our reality is sort of binary based. We have night and day. We have the light and the dark, and I believe this in the precession of the equinox, this 26,000 year cycle is a full cycle of night and day. So we're coming out of the 13,000 year cycle, going into the light and into Aquarius. And during the last the 13,000-year-old cycle, many people say was the fall of Atlantis. And then there's talk of, you know, these ancient civilizations of Lemuria and Atlantis and Mu. And I believe at that time, 13,000 years ago, is when we started to go into the fall. And it was the darker end of this greater cycle. And in doing so, civilization, very advanced civilization, collapsed, and we went into this sort of dark age, so to say, of not having access, forgetting our galactic connections, forgetting who we are, and sort of hitting the reset button. And we can see that peppered out throughout our world. The different civilizations sort of had to relearn how to farm, relearn how to use different technologies. And during that fall, we had a lot of intervention from other species, other civilizations, perhaps with different agendas to utilize the DNA of the humans in different ways. And this is where we come into the Anunnaki story, and also reptilians, injecting some DNA, perhaps. So we've had 13,000 years of hybridization, even during this fall, this dark time, in different pockets of different people, different classes, utilizing different DNA and different stories to tell the human story. And I don't know if I'm on the right path, but you can help guide me, because I can go off on a million tangents.
So are the Anunnaki and the reptilians the same thing?
I don't think so. I think there's aspects of the reptilian consciousness in the Anunnaki consciousness. So like a class structure of and this is not all Anunnaki. This was, I think, just the ones that came to visit us, had a very sort of hierarchical class system that that we see today reflected in our hierarchical structures of government and king and queendom and that kind of that kind of idea that we're getting away from as a society. But those aspects of hierarchy, I think we received a lot of that. I think we got from the Anunnaki, and perhaps before that we had some of that too. But I think that structure, that archetypal structure, coming from the Anunnaki, coming from our reptilian idea.
And what about the Zeta reticulans? They're reptilians, right?
No, I would say the Zeta is a offshoot of, they have aspects of that reptilian consciousness. But we have to remember that all of these different species are going through their own versions of evolution. And a lot of people tend to classify, oh, reptilians are bad. Oh, the Anunnakis, oh, they're great. No, they're bad. Or the Zetas, they're good. They're bad. They're related. They're working with the reptilians, so they must be bad. And I think it's just like humans. It's a mixed bag. Each archetype from the Anunnaki to the reptilians to the Zetas, to the Palladians, to the Syrians, to the Lyrans, to the vegans. They all have different stages of their evolution, and at those different stages have come, those different consciousnesses at different stages have all come to visit Earth. And like I said, like the hologram, we depending on our individual vibration and frequency, are able to tap into different stages of their evolution, and we bring back these stories. And then somebody, a channeler or an experiencer, will then sort of say, well, this is what the Anunnaki is, because I've had that experience. And they're right, because they did have that experience. But perhaps we are easy to say, well, that's what the consensus is the Anunnaki, turned humans into slaves or created the human archetype through their DNA engineering, and then created the slaves. Therefore, they're bad because they enslaved the human race. But we have to remember, not all Anunnaki have, even in the lore, there's the story of the, different factions of the Anunnaki coming in and saying, hey, you guys broke, intergalactic code, get the hell out of here, let the human race be on its own. So within the Anunnaki, there's different levels of, what we would label good or bad. And everything has its purpose. Without that DNA interjection, would we even be here right now? Would we even be having this conversation?
No.
Right.
So this is what I pieced together from listening to interviews and the things different people said, is that this is all different things that people said that kind of make sense to me. And again, obviously everything's multidimensional, so it's just one narrative. But basically, they were where we are now, but they went down the they lost connection with the heart energy, right? And they went down the artificial intelligence path, and then that's why they do all this hybridization and all this stuff
with the Zetas.
But
Zetas you're talking about, right?
I don't know. Just like in relevance to what's happening now, but actually, as we are waking up to what's been going on and being able to end it, right? Because this is the beginning of the end, right? So as we wake up to who we are, it's actually helping them with their evolution. So it's helping them come back into heart-based consciousness. Is that something that you? Is that something?
I do. Yeah, I agree with that. I would say that sounds like this Zeta story. Because we've had so much intervention in connection with the Zeta species, especially with the hybridization programs in the 80s and the 90s, early 90s, really the 70s and the 80s was really when that was ramping up. And yeah, that seems to be the consensus storyline that people experienced, that the Zetas were very disconnected, very left-brained, logical, and disconnected from their emotional bodies. And they needed the human DNA, and not just the DNA, but the human interaction to reactivate the emotional body that was turned off through their species, through genetic engineering, cloning, and sort of scientific manipulation that we're seeing. We have aspects of fractalized mirrors of that story in our society today, and it's a big part of what's happening right now. And through their interaction, they are reactivating their emotional bodies and then going on their path of evolution.
So you're saying the people that are enacting this dark agenda right now is a combination of different. It's not just reptilians. It's like different alien races.
I would say it's definitely. Because remember, if we go back to everything is a fractal and everything is a reflection, then we can take these different galactic story points and we can sort of say, oh, I can see an aspect of that in this species. I can see an aspect of that in that species and an aspect in that species. And perhaps in their species story, they had fractalized reflections of the reptilian, of the Anunnaki and everything else. So it's more, I would say we use the species and we use these stories of these different species and people who have interactions with these beings and can tell the story. I think the story is there for us to reflect on. The interaction with these species, they show up to tell us a story. So we can then choose in our waking life now which direction we want to go, and some of them are coming back in time or through time, through this interdimensional travel, and they're sharing their experiences. So then we can say, oh, okay, if we go down this path, it leads to this, or it could lead to something like this, a manifestation like the Zetas having to go underground and destroying their world, and genetically engineering, losing their ability to procreate. If we go down the path of full logic, only mind, then it could lead to that. And so they're, in a sense, offering humanity a choice to choose that path or choose another path. And many of us hear that story and we're like, oh my God, no, I don't want that at all. That sounds horrible. But some people, obviously, many in our government, in our governments around the world, in our, in big tech and big pharma and all these, these people think that's a great way to, that's the only way to continue the species, is to have full control, hierarchy, and, cut off the connection to our emotions, and turn people and create a slave race. They may be doing that unconsciously, probably not consciously, but a lot of that is just DNA. It's part of their DNA. It's part of who they are, coming from these different lineages, coming from these different storylines and their archetypes. And most of us, I think, would agree and look at that and like, no way, that's not what we want to do. But for them, that's the only way, and they don't see any other way.
So when I asked you if you wanted to do an interview, you said as long as we could talk about 5D, and I can't remember what else you said.
I think just this subject matter.
This is one of the things I think is interesting in your interviews, because I'm like a really right brain person. I'm all about feeling, I'm all about experience. And as you say quite often, you really like, and you're often asking about dimensions and density. And so I'd love to just hear from you, like, what is a dimension? What's the difference between dimension and densities? And what's 5D? And talk about dimensions.
Sure. One of my favorite subjects. So many people have this, we keep hearing about the 5D, the fifth dimension, and dimensions and densities both are just ways to measure consciousness. Actually, I'd say densities is more of a way of measuring states of consciousness, almost like how we say water, ice, and steam for the same H2O, right? These are different state. It's the same material, but just in different stages of existence. A water, a gas, or a solid. So densities is that. So first density consciousness would be our rocks, rocks and minerals, and stuff that we consider to be dead. But all consciousness, in my opinion, it's conscious, it's alive, it's moving. There is an evolutionary aspect to it. And believe it or not, I've had conversations with rocks. So there is
the rocks are really
they're highly intelligent. They're highly intelligent. They've been around a long time, so there's a lot of wisdom in those rocks. So we that's sort of first density consciousness. Second density consciousness. These are just labels that I've collected from all my interviews. This is what we want to hear. So again, I make it your own, and people may have different thoughts, or I'm not telling anybody that their idea is wrong. This is just how I've kind of compiled it in my own sense. Plants and animals traditionally are second density consciousness. There's through time, they move much quicker. Their evolution is quicker, and we see a birth, a death, usually in a shorter amount of time than we see the rocks and the minerals. We humans have traditionally been in the third density consciousness. And this is all correlation to the rainbow spectrum, to platonic solids, to our chakras as well. So if you I like to use the chakra system to think about where in our chakras, these densities reside. So our sort of solar plexus or upper abdomen is kind of where we're at. And we have in that stage, this third density consciousness, we're sentient, we're aware of who we are in this reality, and we're able to self-reflect, look into the mirror and say, okay, I'm Reuben, and I need to navigate and survive in this reality, and I need to do stuff. And that's sort of survival instinct comes from that, the gut, right? Our gut tells us if this is a good or a bad thing, and if we need to go this direction out of survival. But as we're evolving, and we're sort of on this cusp right now, we're in a 50%, or maybe a little, depending on where we are in the planet and where we are, but we have the choice to be in a third density consciousness or a fourth density. And the fourth density correlates with the heart and the heart chakra. So more of that green energy, and it's more expansive. And if we go from our gut to our heart and we just feel into that, we feel more expansive. Our gut tightens up, and it's more of like, we get that gut feeling. We used to say this all the time when I was younger anyways, is like, what does your gut say? Now we're shifting our language and we're saying, well, what does our heart say? And we're more in our hearts now than we have ever been before. And the more we go into the heart and we use that to navigate with, instead of the brain or our guts, then we are able to have a more expansive way of navigating this reality. And it seems to be guiding us, our heart especially seems to be guiding us in the right direction, because I think that's where our natural evolution of where humans are going. And all of this, as we move into this heart space, the animals and the plants are moving into the gut space. The minerals are moving into the second space. So their lifespan, we're able to have conversations as we would treat a cat or a dog, perhaps now or just a decade ago. We're going to start seeing the minerals, as I said, having conversations with minerals is going to become more normal as we in our cats and our dogs. Really, I mean, we're going to start talking to them, maybe not with words, but I know many people who are connecting with their pets and their animals more and more, and having telepathic communication and able to cater to their needs a little bit better. So this, and then it keeps going. So then the higher density physical forms, like for example, Lisa Royale, who channels Sasha, she comes from a upper echelon fourth density consciousness, which humans are just moving into the lower echelon fourth density. So and there's spectrums within the spectrum. So in a fourth density consciousness, there's the lower end, and then there's the higher end, and fifth, and so on. And as you go higher in these densities, you peel away your physical form. You start going more into the light body, and it's I use the for most of the density spectrums that I've been able to put together, is that fifth density and higher is pretty much a non-physical form. And these collective consciousnesses, some people say, like Wendy Kennedy channeling the ninth dimensional Palladians, that's a group consciousness of many physicalized beings, but all projected like our planet Earth. If we were to have a conversation with Mother Earth, think about, and she's a seventh density being, it's all of our individual density level consciousnesses combined to form this massive consciousness of Mother Earth. And she has access to all the physical and non-physical beings here on Earth. So we have, when we talk with her, she's also has the knowledge of the the fairy world, and these other unseen worlds at different dimensional levels. So dimensions is, I believe, just a way to measure space and time, and within the densities. So fifth dimension is a measurement of reality within the fourth density consciousness. So the most significant thing I feel with the fifth dimension is our detachment from linear time. So as we move into that state, time becomes more fluid, and it's not so linear, and we can kind of jump around in time, which gives us access to other dimensional realities, states, other dimensional states. So it's like taking so we know, so like say third density would be first would be the solid, let's say using water in the example. So you know, we have mineral worlds in let's say ice being the physical solid, and then we have liquid being still more physical than the ice, but less harder to contain. And then we have steam, and then we have, let's say, other states of matter that we haven't quite discovered, like plasma or other ideas of water that can go into other states, quantum states. Maybe we might use the word quantum because it's a state that we can't physically measure in this realm, but it's still a state, and that's another way to sort of use these different states of measurement for density and dimension.
Have you spoken with beings in every dimension? 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th? Does it go above 9th?
Yeah, there's Nora channels I think the 12th dimensional Palladian collective. You know, I don't know beyond that dimensions. I don't know how many dimensions. I would imagine they're infinite, but you know, relative to where we are at, I think once we get beyond like the 12th dimension, there's that the information just becomes not relevant to who we are as physical beings. Yeah.
And oh yeah, are you able to correlate it to 12 strand DNA? Is there a link between when people talk about activating the DNA and the 12 strands?
I don't know the exact link, but I do know that there's something within our DNA, within our physical structure, within our reality with math, with the number 12. We have the 12 signs of the zodiac. We have the idea of 12 dimensions. We have the 12 hours on the clock. We have there's a very significant correlation between the number 12 and who we are. And then 2 + 1 = 3, and 3 is also a magical number when you dive into numerology and those things. So I definitely think perhaps the 12 strand DNA is more of a reality than not, but I don't know exactly how that all connects.
So my understanding of where we are is that basically, you know, and as I say, listening to your shows the past 6 months has really helped me piece all this together a lot. But basically, we are all interdimensional beings, right? And we're all existing on many dimensions at once. And like you were just saying, that's been suppressed and hidden from us, and we're just waking up to that. And this whole kind of dissolution of the 3D, this whole kind of what's the word, crumbling, dissolving, that was the word, dissolving of the 3D is gonna happen more and more, so that none of that's going to be left, and the only option is for us to step into this, what they call Homos Galacticus, right? So this understanding of ourselves as galactic beings. So could you speak on that for us? What does that mean to you, Homos Galacticus?
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever completely be, the 3D is going to completely dissolve, because like I said, as we gain these higher perspectives and as we move in different states, for example, going back to the water analogy, the ice is still can become ice. It's still there. We can still peer into and go back into the ice if we ever need to. But as we realize these higher states of consciousness, as we move into these higher states of consciousness, we see the value of having a solid structure to create a base for us, our homes and buildings and these things. We need a strong foundation of integrity to build off of, and we will always go in to make sure that those states exist. But we're not bound by the limitations of those realities of the 3D. So as we move into these higher states, the old structure of 3D is no longer serving us in the way it was, as containing our consciousness in this reality. So we expand into these higher dimensions. And I think as we continue to evolve and wake up to our true potential, to the unlimited potential that us as interdimensional beings are, then our sort of the natural evolution is we're going to develop new technologies. We're going to become more telepathic. We're going to connect with each other and realize the connections that we already have, and then fortify new connections based on this new understanding, and building new worlds, new realities, new technology. And then eventually, I think the idea, which Bashar says, Homo Galacticus is the human species going beyond our limitations of space and time, and then becoming shepherds for other civilizations to go through their evolution. How long this all takes, it could be thousands of years before we get to that state. But one of the through lines of the series is this idea of ascension, this idea that the human race is going through this in a very short amount of time, going through a major evolutionary jump. And this only happens every 13,000 years or so. So it's a very exciting time for humanity to make this transition, and we get to do it within our lifetimes. It's quite something extraordinary that we don't typically see. So that's why we have our visitors. That's why we have so many visitors from many different species coming to assist us in this time, to give us knowledge and to sort of hold our hands through this transition. So we don't go too crazy, even though most people watching this will probably think we're crazy.
Only crazy people follow me. My name's Kate Magic.
Yeah, that's true. You do have a magical name, so so they're fine. But your average Joe might not. Anyways, eventually they'll catch on.
So I know you love to ask people this question, like that vision. I've seen that vision my whole life, where we're living in harmony and peacefully, and like you say, we're using things like telepathy and telekinesis and this advanced technology. And you just said you see it in your lifetime. What timeline would you put on it? How many generations away? How
many generations? I mean, for me, I want it now, right? I'm the kind of guy who's like, oh, let's do this now, but I'm learning through going more within that there's a natural cycle that humanity, that everybody as an individual, that has to go through this process of their own awakening, their own discovery. I still in my process, but perhaps seeing those ships escalated or triggered me to go down this path, to take that first step into the woo. Many people were born, perhaps yourself, born with these abilities, and we're already kind of seen through the matrix. But many of us were born into this reality with that shut off. And it takes certain events like the ET thing for people like me to start to step into that. So everybody's going to have their own timing to all this. And for me, it's just being patient at this point. Now I'm just like being patient. It may not happen in my lifetime, and that's okay. I do think with the acceleration of how we can just look at past events, especially in this past couple of years, we can see how accelerated things are. My personal opinion is, I think we have 7 years of hard times for general humanity. For those of us who have been doing this internal work and doing this stuff, I think it's not going to be that hard. I think we've already kind of done that hard process. The hard part is for us to see our fellow humans, as many of us now, to see our fellow humans right now go through this transition. That's what's hard for us. I know it is for me. And reminding them, hey, it's going to be okay. You know, just a few, it's just turning the dial a little bit. You just got to tune in a little bit over here and do this, and then it's super easy. But you know, that's easy to say, but not easy to do for so many. So it's just a matter of being patient to watch everybody in their own timing come into the shift, and then being there, holding our hands out to say, hey, when you're ready to come over here, then we're here, we're ready to go. We're, you know, we've got this, we're ready to go with our telekinesis. We're ready to go with our, calling the ships, and, these technologies are just waiting there for us, but we have to make shifts in our thoughts and our actions, and how we, and our emotions and how we process things, because it's like giving the analogy of playing with nuclear weapons. It's like giving nuclear weapons to kids, and until the kids are mature enough to play with these tools, these weapons, which aren't weapons in that reality, they're more of tools. We have to be ready as a collective to do that before we can have the telekinesis. We have to use these responsibly, and we're already seeing how irresponsible these technologies, through our social media manipulation and psychological goofiness, and just all the stuff that we're seeing, and I think we're seeing it on purpose. It's teaching us that if we don't responsibly use these tools, then we're going to create chaos, and it's not going to go well.
Yeah. So one of my favorite things to say is embodiment is the ascension process, because it's all about our frequency, right? And we shift our frequency, and that is ascension. So it's about clearing the channel. And I know that that's something you often refer to with veganism. And I love that a lot of the interviews, you're barefoot, you're always in beautiful nature settings. Can you talk to us what that means to you? Like, what is the embodiment process for you personally, and how's that been on this, what is it now, 15-year journey?
Yeah. I love the Bashar explanation of our reality is based on thoughts, emotions, and beliefs. And so being aware of our thoughts, our emotions, our belief, and being aware of the frequencies that each one of those harnesses. And then most importantly, from that, taking action is the number one frequency. Like the physical action is the embodiment, I think, that you're speaking of, is what truly is representative of what we put out into the world, is our physical actions. So of course, our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs are at the core of that, and they come and go. Emotions, thoughts, belief systems shift, and that's a constant moving thing. But ultimately, those three things come and formulate and propel us to do what to take physical action in our reality. So for me, like, the idea of veganism is a physical action that we can take in our current reality, is a conscious choice to move into the frequency of, to me, veganism is the principle of non-harm, causing no harm to another. Even though some people would argue that, you're eating sentient plants, and that's the thing. It's like, well, doing it, even to a certain extent, eating animals is in a conscious way, making sure that they have good lives and are well taken care of. And then when they come towards the end of their life cycle, then they, the whole Buddha story of the rabbit jumping into the fire and, providing food for Buddha, or not Buddha, but his teacher or whatever. But anyways, there's a through our physical actions, we can make conscious choices on like what we buy, the ingredients we choose to put into our body, how we, what we intake. And that is the embodiment. I think having the awareness and the knowledge and the understanding of the different frequencies that we tune into, and then how we process that, and then how we put that back out to the body or out into the world. Because ultimately what you put out is what you get back. So it's okay to have evil thoughts. People think like, oh, if I must not think evil. And it's like, no, it's, or evil, or, atrocious things. What somebody, like, oh, that guy, he should kill him or whatever. And it's like, you advise not to have those thoughts. But if you do, if it slips out and it's like, whoa, rein it back and just say, okay, yeah, I got pissed off. I had some really nasty thoughts, but I'm not going to take action on that at all. Like, that is just not who I am. So having that sort of internal dialogue of connecting in with, and being conscious of what you put out. And ultimately that is what is going to help escalate the manifestation of your reality. Is what you put out is what you get back. So constantly living in the ideas of veganism, of harmlessness, is going to help create a world, I think, where we can live in unison and in harmony with nature and each other.
Beautifully said. Thank you. And what about Pachamama, the relationship with Mother Earth?
Well, we are born from this soil, from this land, and this planet, and so many people feel disconnected now, and I think that is because our societal constructs have they in a sense they teach us to not recognize our connection to Mother Earth, and that is partially by design for control mechanisms and these things. But the more we understand how connected we are to this glorious planet and to her energy, and we can connect in with nature, there's so much that she provides. She does provide everything for us through our nourishment, through our food, and through our energy, and through our relationships with the plant and animal kingdom. So always remembering, first and foremost, yes, you may feel like you resonate from the Pleiades, or even from the Zetas, or Lyra, or wherever. But first and foremost, you are human. We are all human, and we are having a human experience, and we need to honor our birth into this reality, and that we came from this other human bodies, our mothers and our parents, and we're on this planet. So to honor that first and foremost, and to recognize the relationships, and then ask our Mother Earth for assistance when we're feeling disconnected. Initially, I was always asking the stars. I think it just resonated with the star people in the beginning, because I felt so out of place or disconnected from Earth because of just our societal constructs. But remember, these societal constructs are not the true Earth that we're born from. These are projection overlays of disconnection, intentional disconnection for control mechanisms. So our true nature is Mother Earth. Our true nature is here on this planet. And that is interconnected throughout the cosmos like a mycelium network, that we have these connections to the star people. But first and foremost, we are human here on Earth.
Yeah, beautifully said. So do you try and spend a lot of time in nature? Do you do a lot of barefoot
Absolutely.
walking?
Yeah, as much as I can every day, sort of turning my home. I live in the mountains in Big Bear, California, and turning my home into a sanctuary with, our backyard garden, and I've got mountain trails just everywhere I can go hiking on. And I teach breath work once a week over by the lake, and connecting into the land in breath work and qigong. I do. Coming from my martial art background, I have some experience with qigong and do that as well. So as much as we can spend time in nature and connecting in with that energy, she will provide everything for us.
Yeah. Okay, my last question I know is your favorite. So
okay.
tell us about what the work you're doing in First Contact and trying to like make that connection. And how do you, because like I said at the beginning, like I'm really familiar internally with interdimensional beings, but I actually can't imagine it externally. So tell us what you think it'll look like, and how you see it all unfolding. Yeah, tell us about your work that you're doing to try and make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's happening now all over. People are having really in-depth contact with different beings at different states. Again, in the physical and non-physical, or quasi-physical is a buzzword nowadays. A lot of people in their dream states are having interactions with these beings, and I've had, they show up in different forms. So in orbs, and in bright lights in the sky. What happens is, I think on the other side of the veil is the physical construct is very different than how we perceive things in this reality. So for something of these other energies to pierce into our reality, it takes different forms, and it uses our construct of reality as a template in a sense. So it'll manifest as Zetas, or as Lyrans, or different ideas of what these different consciousnesses, or Jesus or Buddha or Krishna. And it just uses what's in our sort of zeitgeist of vocabulary to manifest in the closest relationship to that as a physical reality. So I think many of us project our ideas of what is an ET based on the movies and based on our societal constructs and our other vernacular. Ultimately, I don't think it's any of that. I think it's so far from what we project it to be that we don't have a language for it. So I really don't know what it's going to look like. It's constantly manifesting, and as we evolve and pull back from our projections of what we think it should be, then we allow it to come in its more natural form, and then we can experience it and get the wisdom in a greater way. So I really would say it's gonna to not have any construct of what it's going to look like, because the phenomenon is going to be different for each of us based on our thoughts, our beliefs, and our emotions. And I would just say, just get ready for anything, and look for an orb, look for a shadow thing out of the corner of your eye, an emotion, a thought. Look for it all, because it's all going to manifest in a unique way for each individual, and then connect into it that way. And the best way, and this is why I say go internally, have that experience internally, because then you're not projecting outside. I think all these UFO researchers are like, it's a saucer and it's going to thing and it's got to fly through the sky and it's all this stuff. And it's like, it's yes, all of that and above. But when you internally go into your internal mechanism of dialogue of whatever that is, you're not so focused on what the outside thing is going to be. But it's going to show up in both. It's going to have both a physical aspect to it, but more of an internal aspect, because we are the gatekeepers to the phenomenon in our physical selves. Our as Nassim Haramein says, at the core of every proton is a black hole, and we are made up of atoms, protons, neutrons. Everything is part of our existence. So we are interdimensional beings, as we said, and we're projecting this phenomenon. We're bringing it through our consciousness and through our awareness as we wake up to the non-limitations that we've been thinking that we've had, all these limitations. So
brilliantly said. But you're doing aren't you doing kind of ceremonies to create a space to invite them, to welcome them in?
Oh yeah. So the CE5 phenomenon, which sort of coined by Dr. Stephen Greer, is I do that often, and go out and hold meditation, and sometimes we get lights in the sky, but I would say every time the group, most people in the group have some sort of internal experience, whether it's their consciousness showing up, arriving on a ship, or a being coming in and communicating with them audibly, or visions, or some sort of communication. So when we open the door through our intention, then 9 times out of 10, there's somebody on the other side of the door to welcome us and to have dialogue, not in a physical dialogue sense, but in however the phenomenon shows up.
I saw a Gaia show where they said, the guy, I can't remember who it was one of these ex-military people, and he said that the US government is in touch with the US government knows of 57 alien races that are taking an interest in the planet right now. Does that sound, do you back that up?
I can't confirm that, but that sounds about right to me. I know many species are here to assist us at this time. They're patiently waiting for us to sort of move through this evolution, and they know, as a whole society, we've been very cut off from our interdimensional aspects. So and they know it's a process. They know humanity is going through an evolution. So kind of like in Star Trek, the Prime Directive, they can't interfere directly, but indirectly they can, and they are, through personal experiences, through many of the people in my show, myself. I've had numerous experiences. Sounds like you've probably had some dialogue with some beings from time to time, and I think that's the process. It's going to continue to happen more and more for more people. I know so many people reach out to me every day who watch the show, and they thought they were going nuts the past couple of years, that doors were opening and they were having strange experiences and dialogues with interdimensional beings, and then they found my show and they're like, oh, maybe I'm not nuts, other people are having this as well. So I think that's just the natural progression of where we're headed, is more and more people are going to be tuning in. Some people tuning in consciously, like myself, who I had the one experience. I'm like, oh, I want more. How do I do this? How do I activate this dialogue? And I found out by going within, I can activate it. And others are just spontaneously are being activated.
But you came to create this dialogue, right? You came to do it.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, the soul contract, that the thing that I resonated with the most. Yeah. I at this point, that makes the most logical sense, based on, I still hang out a lot in my logical mind here. And
you have a sense where you're from? Which
a lot of people say, a lot of the channelers and psychics say Pleiades. They say, my I've got a big soul contract with the Palladian star system, and that I've hung out in Arcturus a lot. But I don't have any super direct dialogues with Palladian beings. Actually the only beings that I've actually interacted with in a sort of a telepathic way directly that I'm aware of is the mantis beings. So I really have I know I have a strong connection with them. I don't know if that means I'm from, if I'm a mantis being.
You look Palladian, but I'm
Yeah, it's a lot of people say that. I respect and enjoy the teachings from the Palladians very much. But I just like it all. For me, all of it. Even the reptilians, I adore the reptilians. I think there's Treb and Rob in season 1 just have such a great time interacting and communicating with him, and even some of the harsher reptilians, the draconians. I haven't had direct dialogue with them, but I resonate with them in the sense that some of their archetypal structures, like they're kind of like the Klingons in Star Trek. They have this warrior attitude, and when you match their frequency with that I'm a warrior, they tend to show you respect. And I've noticed that. I have had some interactions with them, but I don't have any prejudice against any of the species or races, and I like all of them. Actually, I like aspects of them, and I think they're all like cool in my book. Like, I just like the cool factor of just the fact that we even have that people are having interactions with these different species. It's just, to me, it's just fascinating. It's just super cool.
I think that's the perfect place to end it, with loving the reptilians.
Yes, we love the reptilians. We don't have to be like them. We have the choice to not be like them, but there's definitely something we can learn from them. And I think, if anything, just the fact that if we see everything in the world as a reflection of what we want, what we can choose to be like. And if you want to be a reptilian, that's great. But just don't do some of those. Yeah, just don't, no oppression, please. I don't appreciate that. So, and I found the more advanced reptilians, when you sort of stand your ground and say, no, not going to do that, then they actually respect that and like, okay, I'll go find somebody who wants to be oppressed.
Yeah, because we're all free will beings, right? We're all free will beings in a free will universe, and that's all this is about, in a way, is us remembering we have a choice to say no, because as soon as we say no, we choose something else, right?
Absolutely. And the reptilians are one of the races that are here to show us that. And when we stand in our power and say no, thank you, and firmly say no, thank you, because they'll push. They're like, oh, really? Okay, I'm gonna try it. And you're like, no, I said no. And when you say no, they back off.
Yeah.
And I think that's the lesson. And that's what we have to do right now. That's why we're seeing all this goofiness in our societal, they're pushing as much as they can. Okay, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And you're going to, we're going to lock you down for this much more. And we're going to put it in. And it's because people are allowing it.
Yeah.
People are not standing in their power and saying no. Until we say no, the reptilians are going to continue to try to do their thing. And for that, I respect them, because they're teaching us. They're teaching us how to say no.
Yes, beautiful, beautiful. Reuben, where can we find you? What have you got coming up? What do you want to plug?
Well, Interview with Ed, it's all one word. .org is the website for the show. And I do have my own personal website, Reuben Langdon, all one word, .com, ReubenLangdon.com. But right now, my passion is the show. And all the updates I do are there. I have a social network with Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. I really don't go on Facebook much these days. Twitter, I'm on here and there, but Instagram, I post updates from the show. So, and it's all just my name, Reuben Langdon. So pretty simple, all one word across the board.
Brilliant. And you got new shows coming out all the time.
Every month I've sort of made the commitment. I've filmed, I've got about 30 episodes for season 3 slated, and filmed most of them. There's a couple I haven't. So I'm just released 2 more episodes. So we're on episode 9. So every month, the first of the month, I'm releasing a new episode.
And it's a genius format, because we haven't really talked about it, but it's a total genius format, because you interview the channeler and then you interview the channel.
The channel, yeah. And season 3 is quite a different experience. There are channelers in there, but I'm venturing more, and I started to do this in season 2 as well. Not just channelers, but experiencers, teachers, shamans. I'm kind of going a little different direction with season 3, just looking at aspects of the phenomenon in many different ways and how it shows up. So I'm going to be talking with an animal communicator. I'll be talking, or a channeler for animals. I'll be talking with an autistic woman who channels through her mom. It's more, I would say, season 3 is more earth-based, and we're going less galactic and more at home here in Earth, and the different aspects where we can look in our Earth plane and find sort of the phenomenon already there, fairies and mermaids and these kinds of things, trees in our spirit worlds. And yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. Awesome. Reuben, thank you so much. It's been a total joy.
Thanks for having me.